students. One conversation where film theory collides with the reality of filmmaking. Life after film school. Our guest, Ralph Winter, producer of Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes, Fantastic Four, and the X-Men trilogy, including the 20th Century Fox film, X-Men: The Last Stand.
Hi, I'm Darren. Pleased to meet you.
Stephanie.
Stephanie, huh?
I'm Mark. Very good to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
As film students, what's the most important thing we can learn before graduating film school?
As a producer, I think about controlling material, finding the right stories. Those are the things that are important in terms of building a career. If you're going to produce, you want to get in touch with the material. That's the most important thing. You're building a library. You're building something where you own part of the copyright, or you're attached to it in a way that provides ownership. And since, you know, I'm not an actor and I'm not a musician, I don't have residuals, writer or director, it's an opportunity to sort of build a future. If there's one thing I wished I had learned when I was, you know, starting out in the business, it'd be about material.
About controlling the material?
About controlling it, either optioning it or owning it in some way. So be that a book, a screenplay, a piece of material, you want to be attached to it in some way. I think that's the most important thing.
You've been both an executive producer and a producer on
Right.
certain films. Can you tell us a little bit about the difference between those two?
The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences recognizes the producer as the one for the best picture. And the producer is the champion, the flag waver, the leader from finding that material or being attached to it to the final result, exploiting it. And that's where the buck stops, is the producer. And somebody's got to be that champion. Somebody's got to be that cheerleader. Someone has to be that encourager all the way along, saying, we can do this, we can make this happen. There's lots of other roles that are important, executive producer and associate producers. All those things are necessary in today's environment to get movies made. It's that old vaudeville act of all the plates that are spinning, and your job is to keep all those plates spinning, and it looks hilarious, but it's fun, and it's fun to see that final result. It's fun to shepherd that material, find the crew, help with the casting, work with the director, work with the studio, work with marketing, work with distribution to get that done. And for a producer, the sort of joy and goal of that is that opening night to sit in a theater and watch how people respond to your movie. Hopefully they laugh in the right spot, they cry in the right spot. And that's real enjoyable, to know that you were involved from inception to delivery. That's cool.
Will you go to the different screenings to actually see their reactions?
Yeah. What we do is we get a car and we get a couple of other folks that are on the movie, and we'll arrange like 5 or 6 theaters in Hollywood and Westwood, and then we'll jump in and we'll go. So on Fantastic Four, we went in to a theater in Century City at a 5:30 screening or something like that. And we came in near the end, and we stood in the back and looked and saw, well, you know, it's not really that full because the first 3 or 4 rows are kind of empty. And but we stood there for a minute and watched how the reaction, the crowd, and then we saw, well, wait a minute, those rows aren't empty. There's little heads there. It was all kids.
Oh, really?
First 4 rows were all kids. Theater was packed. And then you stand out in the lobby, they don't know who we are. And you can hear them talk about the movie, what they liked. They're IMing their friends. And we do that 4 or 5 more times. And you get a good feeling whether the movie's playing and whether it's working and all that.
Was it what you expected?
It actually was better than we expected. You know,
great.
you don't expect, who are all these little kids coming to a screening at 5:30 in Century City? I mean, you just don't expect that.
After all the pressure, like dealing with time commitments and money and things like that, would you say this was the scariest point when you actually do have to go in and see how the audience reacts?
Yeah, you know, because we don't preview these movies. Because now if you preview a movie ahead of time and somebody puts on the internet that they don't like it, it can create a bad spin for you. And why prejudge the movie until it comes out? We really don't know what the audience thinks out there till opening day. So yeah, there's a lot of heart-thumping kind of nervousness about, is it going to play like we think it will?
You graduated from UC Berkeley with a degree in history. I actually also have a history degree before attending film school, and I'd like to know how you think that's helped you, contributed to your film career. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's helped. I think it's helped in terms of that liberal arts education and at least having an appreciation for literature and art and history. And I've advised high school kids that want to go in the movie business what film school to go to, and I've said to them, well, get a liberal arts education first, because how are you going to know what great art looks like or great literature unless you've studied and learned and spent some time doing that? I'm constantly reading different books about history even now, because I find that a nice balancing act. I can't just read things about movies. So I'm reading a book about Lincoln right now because I like that part of history, and it's kind of fun.
But you also said that you thought film school was important and that you advised people to go to film school after a liberal arts degree.
Yeah, I think you need that liberal arts education first. I think that's a great foundation about the business we're going to be in. You've got an advantage of going to film school. I didn't. Film school is great. I mean, if you can do that and you can afford to go and spend the time and do that, I think you'll be a better filmmaker for it. The tendency for us in this business is to be self-referential. We watch the same movies and then we start making movies that look like those movies, and you wonder why it's all appears to be the same. You look at the ads, haven't I seen that movie before? So unless there's a perspective and a foundation that goes outside of that, I think that's why some of your better producers in town are very well read and very literate, finding that kind of material.
In film school we're taught that we have to sometimes have creative ways to launch our careers, and you started by producing training videos.
Right.
How did the experience working on those, help you later on in your career?
It's interesting because I think working at Broadway department stores where I was working is sort of my film school. It was a little different. There's a real-world environment, and there were deadlines and a corporate place to report to, and I had to do little marketing studies to demonstrate that my stuff was effective. In a lot of ways, I think the techniques that you do on a $3,000 video are similar to making a $3 million or $30 million movie. The process of storytelling, how's it going to be compelling and keep the audience's interest. The difference is on a $3,000 video, you're doing the lighting and electrocuting yourself. You're doing the editing. You got no one else to blame when you get to the edit room and you didn't shoot it right. It's a steep learning curve, and it's very good. So when I went to Paramount and worked on television shows and feature films in post-production, I had the added benefit of knowing how some of that stuff goes together, even though I didn't touch the camera or touch the lighting equipment. I had the principles down and I knew what was going on because I had done and struggled with those same things. So I think that helped in my perspective, knowing that I had actually done it.
X-Men is a huge franchise, and I'm sure that must have like a ton of issues, like dealing with Marvel and working with licensing and marketing. How do you, get a handle of all that? What are the pluses and minuses in working with that situation? Well,
Marvel is definitely a key player in all of this because of the licensing of the characters, but also they have spin-off with toys and merchandising and all of that. To make the movie successful, you try to drive the movie and talking about it into the culture. So it might be with Mercedes-Benz cars, it might be with Nokia, Oakley sunglasses. They create the glasses for Cyclops. Right. So you try to find partners that can be helpful where it saves you a little money on the production. More importantly, it gives you a spin further down in the culture where they can talk about the movie as they're advertising those glasses. In a sense, it's free advertising. You try to figure out ways to make that a push-pull so that everybody's getting something out of it. And then you try to work that into the production. How can we do that? You try to figure that stuff out in the story. You don't want to make a commercial. But you do want to figure out how can it be organic and feel like it's part of the movie and be specific. Otherwise, you have all these nondescript cars and nondescript watches and nondescript glasses, and it's like, well, what world is that? I don't live in that world. You try to figure out how do we make sure that we're rooted in the real world without overemphasizing the commerciality of it.
What are some of the other aspects that go on behind the scenes in a film, such as X-Men: The Last Stand?
All these big movies, you have to have an infrastructure that's really like the military. It is a huge undertaking to marshal this group across town or on stage.
I'm sure.
This is the kind of group that, when we're on location, we take up 1.5 miles of curb space. If you took each of your vehicles and lined them up, it's 1.5 miles, could be 2 miles. Organization is key in that. We have a good team that's done that. On this movie, we had mutants and soldiers in the courtyard for a final battle scene. You got maybe 300 and 350 people. So we had a tent 250 feet long that was our mutant factory.
A mutant factory.
The extras would come in, get out of the bus, they get wardrobed, they get makeup if they have special makeup that goes on there, then they get propped and they go out the door to the set as a mutant or as a soldier. We really developed it like an assembly line. You break all those elements down into those sort of essential parts, and figure out how to manage it like a giant puzzle.
Now that you've completed X-Men: The Last Stand, have you always imagined the X series as being a trilogy?
Bryan Singer originally thought of it as 3 stories. Although he didn't do this one, it was set up for yet one more story. And the writers, Simon Kinberg, Zach Penn, and along with Brett Ratner, our director, have shaped it into a fitting end to these 3 movies. So there's lots of kind of twists and turns, there's culminations, there's a climax to different triangles and relationships that I think make it satisfying for the core audience, and I think it'll be satisfying for an audience that hasn't necessarily tracked with us on all 3 movies.
Nothing can stop us!
You don't need to have seen the first 2 to enjoy this movie. If you have seen those, you'll get more out of it. You'll see how all these things go deeper.
How do you plan for that with the casting decisions, storylines, etc.?
You know, I think the studio always envisioned this as being multiple movies as well. So all of the deals made with the cast were made with options for 2 more movies. So that's the first thing. When you're going to spend the amount of money you spend on these kinds of movies, the first one was made for a little bit less, but you want to be sure that you have the flexibility to actually make more of them and not get yourself in an untenable situation where they're not available or not affordable. So that's the hardest thing in actually making the first one of these, like a Fantastic Four, X-Men, is setting up those deals in a way that everybody agrees, yeah, I'm available to do 2 more. I'm interested in doing 2 more. So at least you have 3 that you can put together. That's the first thing that you got to plan on. Secondly, I don't know that we didn't really beat out the second and third movie when we made the first movie. Again, because of the finances, you sort of say, okay, we kind of have an idea where it could go, but at least let's do a good job on this and let's see how the marketplace responds. And it's hard to remember back with the first X-Men, we were sort of the first ones to do that, and it wasn't really clear, is this going to work? So I think they waited to see how it would perform in order to see if we could go the distance. But it was always thought of as, yeah, let's do a couple of these.
How important is the comic book audience in relationship to X-Men?
Comic book audiences are important in terms of being a core audience.
Yeah.
We got to pay attention to them,
yeah,
but you don't always do everything they want to do. As filmmakers, you have to make very practical decisions about what are they wearing, how do they look. They all can't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. They all can't wear yellow spandex suits. We all don't look good in that. How they're going to act. Yeah, you pay attention to what the fans are saying and you listen, and sometimes that influences our decisions. But generally, we're making a movie we want the core audience to come, but we're making a wider audience movie than that to justify that expenditure.
We were always learned in film school that sequels have the danger of you spending more money and you might not even get as much box office in return. And the X-Men series seems to defy that logic. And I'm wondering what you thought about and how you had so much success.
You're right. The tendency is for the audience, hey, we've seen that before. So what's new and different that we should go back to this for? I think we introduced some new characters in X-Men 2 that made it interesting. The studio believed in us enough to give us more money to go a little deeper with those characters. We were actually able to deliver more action, more spectacle. We do have new characters. Beast is interesting.
Who's the furball?
Angel. Some of those new characters are interesting elements to sort of expand that world of X-Men. And that's something of an added value to bring to the party. The risk is real. If you don't deliver new and better and sort of one-up yourself with the production value and the effects, you run the risk of it not performing, and then that'll probably kill it. So we're very confident. We think we have a very good movie. I think it's better than the first 2. And you don't know until the audience actually comes in and sees it.
How do you go about topping yourself with each successive X-Men film?
When we're really concerned about how do we make our characters look better, have cooler powers, do cooler things, and we want to knock it out of the park. We want to do something that, will just make your eyes bug out. To get a wider audience to come, we have to present something special, different, new characters.
You can't walk through walls,
in a way that widens the X-Men universe and actually attracts a wider audience, or gets an audience that thinks they've seen it before to come back and see the new adventure.
How does home video help in expanding the audience for a sequel? Since now it's easier for people to just go and get it off DVD and watch it and say, oh, I want to go see part 2 that's coming out, or part 3.
Yeah, certainly the DVD market allows an audience to own these things. And now, we're very conscious, even in making the movie, that every frame's got to work. We look at effect shots over and over and over again, because we know when it goes to DVD, people put it on slow and scan, frame by frame. They're looking at it. So we're very conscious of that. There's a fan base that loves these kinds of movies and watch them over and over again. And so they're going to look for those nuances in the new movie. And that can be good and bad. I think that our home video sales are somewhat of an indicator of how we're going to be successful. And these first 2 X-Men movies have really sold well. So there's a built-in audience that they love escaping and being with Wolverine, being with their heroes, and go into that world for 2 hours. So the more they want to do that at home, hopefully we'll provide an experience on the big screen they can't have at home. A 70-foot screen and big sound and a couple hundred people in a dark room who are enjoying the same thing. We'll make it fun. So DVD is important, no question.
Tell me, where is Magneto? You want to know where he is?
With the effects and the makeup, you talked about how crucial the creation of the world is. How do you go about finding the right teams to bring characters like Beast and Angel and Colossus to life?
There's a lot of folks who are great artists here in town that do this. And we watch a lot of these other movies and say, oh, that looks pretty good on Lord of the Rings. Oh, that looks pretty good on this movie over here. So you stay in touch, meet these people, and then what you try to do is bid out some of these things and say, okay, let's have these 3 companies tell us what Beast would look like. How long does it take to put Beast in makeup? How uncomfortable is it for him? What does it take, and what does it look like in the finished product? And the company we used, Spectral Image, located here in town, they're escapees from Rick Baker, and they've done a great job of putting it together and making it happen for us. And Brett was very exacting. Brett pushed their buttons to the limit to make it look uncompromisingly good. And I think we're all the better for it, and that's really what you want a director to do anyway, is to sort of push everybody and say, I'm not taking that for an answer. You got to go further. It's got to be better. It's the wrong color. It's the wrong texture. We need more of this, more of that. And that process pushes everybody to do their very best.
What's your role in helping that process? Is it evaluating the people, helping him get what he wants? What's your role?
Part of my role is to make sure that Brett has all the tools he needs to tell the best story we can tell. And part of my role is to get all the money on the screen. So when he has an issue with an effects company and can't get the right stuff out of them, my job is to dig in and say, okay, what's the problem? Do we have the right people? Are we spending the right amount of money? And so that's a daily give and take thing that involves the makeup effects or the visual effects or how the practical special effects and fire on the set's working. I mean, it's one thing to say, oh yeah, Beast is going to look great. No. Show me what it looks like. Let's shoot it on film. That's a discipline we've all learned over the years. Let's put it up on the big screen and see what it looks like. And that's going to show up all the issues that we think that makeup needs.
Nice suit.
Henry, this is Logan. He's
Wolverine. I hear you're quite an animal.
Look who's talking.
Let's take Beast outside. Let's do Beast inside. Hey, let's have Beast interact with people with fair skin, with dark skin. How's he look? Does he look real? It all seems fine in the makeup trailer. Put it on film. Step outside. Roll the camera. Put it on the screen. Let's see what it looks like. And now you begin to evaluate, is this what we expected? What's the audience going to say? How do we feel about it? Does it make the character look as good as we can?
There is a phrase called, we'll fix it in post. Is that a good or a bad way for a producer to operate?
It's dangerous. It's very dangerous to say we're going to fix it in post. Inevitably, you get into positions where you have to do things in post-production to solve problems you couldn't solve otherwise. If on the set you're going to say we're going to fix it in post, you're creating work for yourself in the last part of the finishing of the movie that you may not be able to deliver. We're talking about 800-900 shots in X-Men. There's a lot of stuff to push through the pipeline. Ideally, you solve these problems in prep. You have to decide through storyboards, through animatics, through testing, does this work? And then, when you actually get to it, if you make a mistake, you've now done everything you can do to plan for it.
2, 1, action!
Generally, you plant your 4 or 5 cameras, shoot that stunt, and now you can enhance it in post You can take out the wires, you can take out cables. Your essential stunt you've actually got on film, and you don't have to fix all of that in post. If you can get it in camera, it looks real.
What do you find most rewarding about producing? Why do you love it?
I think the end result is what I love experiencing. It'll be great to be in the theater and watch people. It's also, I heard a story on NPR about a mom whose son had Down syndrome, and they decided not to tell him when he was growing up, and it wasn't severe enough to keep him out of public school. But when they decided to tell him, they were nervous and very emotional. And the son said, when they told him, he said, "Oh," I had two responses. "Oh, that's why I'm not the head of the math class and why I don't get things as quickly as the other students." But the second thing he said was, "I feel kind of special. I feel like Cyclops or Storm." And it was like, man, that's one of the reasons you make movies, is that somehow that kid, through comic books and movies, found hope about himself, about, what, it's okay to be different. That's very emotional and touching, that people find lots of things in movies for lots of different reasons. Sometimes I speak to elementary school kids, they bring in the fireman and the policeman and the teacher and the movie guy, and said, "Oh, I worked on the movie with the whales and Star Trek," and these kids raise their hand, "Oh, I love that movie," and you're thinking, those kids weren't born when the movie was made. And they're only seeing it later. So there's an enjoyment about the kinds of stuff that you work on have a lasting value. And people will enjoy it for literally decades if you do a good job. How rewarding is that?
So the next film you're working on is Fantastic Four,
Yep.
and which is another big franchise.
Right.
Do you think you're branded as a sci-fi fantasy producer? And if so, are those the kind of movies that you'd like to continue making?
I guess I hope not, and I hope so.
Okay.
I enjoy doing them. I enjoy working on these franchise movies from the beginning. They're fun. I don't want someone to think that I can only make a movie if it has a $100 million budget. Making movies is about the process and about storytelling. Yeah, we got more toys and we've got more things to accomplish on an event movie, but the smaller movies can be just as enjoyable. I enjoy making short movies with other upcoming filmmakers. You get right into the essence of what the story's about, figure out how to do it, use all the tricks you've learned in the big movies, and apply those to the small ones. So I like having a foot in both camps. I like doing those, and I like doing the smaller ones too.
You have an active program that serves to mentor young filmmakers. What do you see as the active role that a producer, an established producer like you, can play in bringing up this kind of talent?
I think it's important to give something back. There's people in this business that took a chance on me when I was coming up, and so I want to do that in the same way and take a chance on other people coming up. Secondly, it keeps you young. It keeps you connected to the upcoming generation of filmmakers. There's a whole nother generation coming up every few years that thinks differently about how movies get made, how stories get told, and try different techniques using new equipment and tools in a way that maybe you hadn't thought of. I want to be in touch with that. And I think it's fun. I think it's enjoyable. And you always need an extra set of hands on the set. Certainly on a lower $2 million movie that may not be a complete union picture, it's easier to get students involved helping it out. On a big union event picture, it's a little more difficult, but there's room to observe and do that depending on what part of the world you're actually shooting in.
Starting from making training videos to being the producer of X-Men: The Last Stand, that's an incredible journey. And I'm wondering, is there one piece of advice that you can give us as aspiring filmmakers that you've discovered over your career?
I can think of a number of things. One is, as we said earlier, about staying close to the story and the material. I think, as a producer, that's critical to your success and finding good stories and staying close to those. I think another thing that's important is, if you do what you say you're going to do, you will stand out in a world of wannabe producer, directors, writers. Heard a speech by Bono last week, and he said, history is measured by results, not by attempts. And so results matter. If you're the one who is consistently reliable about delivering packages or getting the project done on time or making sure it comes in on budget or finding consistently the story that audiences want to hear, you deliver the goods and you do what you say you're going to do, you stand out. One last thing. It's not about making a deal that is a killer deal that's going to make you rich. I think you win by working a long time. There's enough money, there's enough time. You produce good results, you tell great stories, and work hard. You will work a long time, and that's how you win.
It's not a race, it's a marathon.
It absolutely is a marathon. And there's a lot of people that fall off of this race all the way along, and there's a few people that just sort of slow and steady, working on good projects, making it happen, delivering the goods, and you'll win.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Sure.
It was very informative.
You're welcome. All right. Thanks.
Thank you again.
Okay.
Great to meet you.
Thank you. All right. See you.